let it out. I'm in a place of transition. I want to describe that place of transition. To put words to feelings that you probably have yourself, but don't have a way of expressing it. I will be that for you. Because I feel things so deeply. It's just the way he's made me, I guess. But it seems to be this, and there's this frustration here, right? There's this tension between what was familiar before that is no longer familiar to what is unfamiliar that's becoming familiar, right? And how I'm somehow in the middle. Like there's no roots to go back to because I've been uprooted there, but I'm not like rooted in anything else yet. So I'm like in the middle where it's like in between darkness and light, right? In that stretched place, that place where I cannot see. And that seems to be the place where God is producing the faith. And I want to describe what was familiar before that is no longer familiar, but faith is producing the new familiar that is not quite yet familiar. And the old familiar was, the best way to describe it is identifying as an orphan or a slave. And being that of one who was innocent, and in their innocence exploited, and in their innocence taken advantage of, right? Because I didn't just begin believing I was a slave or an orphan. It's like I was taught these things. Like these things were put in place, and I didn't know what was supposed to go there. And so in my ignorance, in my innocence, in my weakness, I said, this must be here. And that is the place that I'm coming from, that was familiar, that's no longer familiar. But it is, you could also say it is the weapon that is formed against me. It is the weight of accusation that has been so strong, that has had such a solid argument my entire life. You are an orphan, you are a slave. Then the introduction into God, where he is taking me out of this old conversation where it's self-blame, it's on me, I have to do it in my self-effort, to this place of grace where he is going to do it. And I wait on him to do it, to produce it. And in that relationship dynamic, he's calling me a son. And that is not familiar, meaning there's not this clear picture of that yet, right? And so I'm like in this cloudy place where what was familiar before, being a slave, an orphan, doesn't fit quite right, right? And there's all of this frustration and this anger that is raising up in me, seeing that place that I believe was true about me, coming to find out that it was a lie. But really just having the wreckage of living that lie for so long, right? The ashes of a life that has been burned up in the fire. And I'm surrounded by ashes, and I'm in this place where it's just, I feel the tension, right? Between ignorance and understanding. And I'm waiting for, this seems to be what is being produced. The faith is being produced for me to receive a level of understanding that I know I am a son, that then rids me of the unfamiliar past orphan slave mentality, right? I'm looking to him in my weakness. I seem to be propped up by him, suspended in air, looking to him to show me, to convince me that I am his, right? And this is the very weak position, because all that was familiar to me before was I'm not his. I'm on my own. I have caused my own pain, my own suffering. It is my fault. I'm doing something wrong. I am lacking somewhere. His light has come in and exposed the lie of that place. But it doesn't seem like that's just the beginning of the process. And I'm waiting for something to come full circle, where I come to know of my sonship in him. to such a degree that there is now no room for the thoughts, the accusations, the comparing from the wheat and the tare. There's no longer room for the tare to be in my life. I'm waiting for those tares to grow along with the wheat to a certain degree, so that when the harvest comes, the tares are burned up in the fire. Because that seems to be what is happening. You have this argument that has come against you, that has come against me, that you are a slave, that you are an orphan, right? And it has been such a heavily weighted argument. I would say that is the tare that is growing. And like the parable of the wheat and the tares, you don't try to tear up the tares prematurely, because then you're going to take the wheat. And so the farmer allows the wheat and the tares to grow together. And you are somehow in the middle of that. You're seeing the weapon form against you grow, seemingly like it's going to prosper. But that is where your faith that he's going to come through for you and convince you that you belong to him, where he's going to build the faith that says, no, I'm not allowing this to prosper, right? But all you've ever felt in your life is the effect of that tare growing, right? This to me is where so many of us are, or so many of where he takes us into a place of transition, right? This is before you receive the promise, the inheritance, because it seems to be that sons and daughters receive inheritances, not slaves, not orphans. The good news seems to be we are not orphans and we are not slaves. What makes us weak in that is we cannot convince ourselves that we belong to him. We need a revelation, an understanding, and we are thirsty for it, for him to prove, convince to us that we belong to him. I saw this video yesterday. This prophetic woman was talking about this, whether this is true or not. Food shortages. She was talking about that there's potential food shortages that are going to happen, but trust God. He will get us through it. And I see it from this place of weakness, saying, what will be on the table for us, what will be on the table for you in a dark time, will be trusting God. Because then he will produce that in your life, right? So meaning you will have to go through a dark time for that to be full circle, for you to then to have the production of fruit that is, I trust God now. He must produce that in your life. He must produce that in my life. That's what puts us in the weak position. You are put into a position like the potter puts the clay on the wheel, and he's like, whenever I am done with this, you will trust me. But in the interim, it's not going to feel that way. In fact, I'm going to bring up all your subconscious beliefs of all the times where you felt like it was on you and you couldn't trust me. I'm going to bring up your weak position, right? I'm going to bring up that argument that has been against you for so long. I'm going to bring up that misidentification that you have had, but in your weakness, it has held you down so tightly. And that is, I am an orphan, I am a slave. And so whatever darkness that the Lord allows you to go through, where he's like, now we're going to walk in this direction, right? I made a video about this the other day. It's like, he seems to be, you're like, okay, I'm a new creation. Let's go on to the new things. And he's like, okay, but I must produce this in you. And so we're actually going to reverse the car back into the hell that you have come from, for you to walk through the fear with me, to know that you belong to me and I keep you. Right? You face the fear with me, and now you have overcome the fear. And so it seems to be God will lead you through a dark time. He will lead you through the wilderness where it is dry. And maybe it seems to be this place that the Lord is taking us into, where it's going to be a dark time. And what's going to come up is that argument that has been against you, where you've been deceived in the dark, where your innocence has been exploited, right? Where you have been deceived to believe that you were an orphan, a slave. And you've had the world and all of the demonic influences of the world convince you so heavily of this at a subconscious level. It's not something you can just throw off. We feel ashamed of the clothes that we're wearing, but we can't take them off. The grave clothes. But it seems to be the honor of the Father to begin with stripping us, to then clothe us in custom-made garments. We're just somehow stuck in the middle. And it's very uncomfortable. Because it doesn't feel like you're rooted anywhere. It's like you can't go back to what it was and you can't go forward. So you're just right there in the middle. It feels like you're just stuck. And you know, you can hear words like you're being prepared. You're in a process of transition, but what are we transitioning from, and what are we transitioning to? And I feel like the Lord has given me that. Is this mentality that we've had, this Egyptian mindset, slave, orphan, and that has been the weapon that is formed against us. And it looks like it's going to prosper. And for a time, it looks like the conditions of it not prospering is us putting it upon ourselves to trust God. But that's not really how it works, because we're still trying to do that from a place of believing that we're an orphan. And I think what we need in our life and what God must produce in our life, that when we could not defend ourselves, in our place of weakness, in our position of weakness, in our vulnerability, he had to come in and perform a miracle. He had to come in and convince us that we belong to him. That is what we were waiting for. And in that place, his grace is sufficient in our weakness. His power will be perfected in our weakness. We have to see it. I have to see it. I'm waiting to see it. Because in the interim, I'm just in the tension of the middle, where I'm not so ignorant to believe, like to be under the influence of deception, but something hasn't happened yet. His power hasn't come in to free me from those accusations, right? And the afflictions, because that's what it will. It's like this: if you have this argument that has been against you your whole life, you have been afflicted. There is pain there. There is a weight to it. There's a weight of sorrow attached to you. You can't just shake it off. You can't just try to have a good day or whatever. You've been zapped of all energy. And I think that's by design too, so that God can show us, convince us that when we could do nothing for ourselves, his grace was sufficient to then bring us into a new reality. The truth that we belong to him, that we are his son, we are his daughter. I am his. And the production of the faith in the place that I could not produce it has now dismantled the argument that I'm a slave and an orphan. See, the faith has to grow past where the argument has grown. The wheat has to outgrow the tare, but they have to grow side by side. And you're in the middle where you see something chasing you down, but you can't move. And so what you believe to be true comes up. And you're just like, if he doesn't come for me, I'm done. If he doesn't convince me that I am his, I will be here forever. I will be stuck in this place forever. So he must come. And I think in that place you were conditioned for a miracle. So if he is about to lead you through a dark time, or you were in a dark time where it feels like a transition, where you're not really rooted to anything, and what was familiar before is not familiar to you, but what he is bringing you into is not also familiar to you. Nothing smells like home, feels like home. Everything looks foreign. I understand. I understand that place. And I think in that place he understands us.